Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. So, my name is Carol Bond, and I'm your MC for today. We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung people of the Eastern Kulin Nations and also pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And we extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians present today. Welcome to our hybrid meeting, to those online and those in the room. Today, in honor of International Women's Day, we are featuring an all-woman team. Thanks today will be given by Sana Malik, followed by the Loyal Toast presented by our chairman, Sandra Hills. Please ensure your glass is charged.
Thank you, Carol. In 1987, a US Supreme Court ruling meant that women could join a Rotary Club. Dr. Sylvia Whitlock from the Rotary Club of Duarte was a pioneer in helping set down this precedent. She was also one of the first women members of Rotary International and the first woman president of a Rotary Club. For 11 years prior to the ruling, Dr. Whitlock served as a Rotarian and engaged in many local projects, even without Rotary International's legislative approval of women members at that point. When asked why, she said she just wanted to get on with it and serve the community through the opportunities Rotaries provided, despite the challenges and setbacks she experienced as a woman. Today, women in Rotary serve alongside men. We are invited, we join, and we embody the Rotary values, including service above self and employing the four-way test. If we can serve as Rotarians with the same spirit Dr. Whitlock did, I'm confident this will help us to continue on our journey of inclusiveness and diversity. And with that, I give thanks for good food, good fellowship, and the opportunity to serve. Thank you.
Oh, no way. That could have been sad. Thank you, Sana. So we're going to have some fun today. And don't worry, Reg is here. You're gonna hear him, President Reg, later on. I haven't done something mean to him. Tied him up. He's fine. And I can see that Gail's online. I can sort of see her around here. But anyhow, so now I don't have a list of. No one's given me a list of names here. So okay, I need to welcome people. I'm assuming someone's going to give it to me at some stage. So Rotarians and guests, a toast to Australia and Rotary International. Australia and Rotary International. Okay, so thank you. Please be seated. So for those online, I just want to say a few things. Those online, we will not be immediately forming a breakout room today, which is normally what we usually do. Today, as our guest speaker will be presenting in the first half of today's meeting due to a conflict in board meetings. So that's fantastic that Gail was still able to attend. Following the presentation at around 1:30 p.m, we will break then for some fellowship. So we'll sort of turn things around a bit. So it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to our 31st meeting of this Rotary year and our 4,927th club meeting in our 101st year on this, our International Women's Day lunch. And even though we know International Women's Day was yesterday, we don't mind. We can have a festival all week. And the theme this year, because the International Women's Day always has a theme, is Break the Bias is the theme this year. So it is wonderful to see you all here today, including those attending online. Hello, those online. So we are honoured to have waiting online our special guest speaker, the acclaimed broadcaster, Dr. Gael Jennings AM. And Gail will be speaking on STEM, and her subject is the way of the future. And we will be hearing from her shortly. In the meantime, would you please acknowledge her welcome? We have visiting Rotarians, visitors and guests of members. I invite you and your host to stand when your name is announced and ask that you please remain standing to enable the club to welcome you in a collective manner. Okay, so apologies in advance if I get anyone's name wrong. So international visiting Rotarians, we have as a guest, so we have Ak Tareen from Madras in India. So welcome, Ak. So Reg has got something he wants to say? No? No? Oh, yes, yes. I just thought he was having anxiety of not being up here. No, he's not. Exchange of banner event taking place now. Oh, okay. Thank you for that. And now we go down to guests of our Rotarians. So guest of Madeleine McManus is Colette Burke. The guest of Bruce Davison is Bryony Bottarelli, but I know I said that wrong because there should be a T in there, I think. A guest of, but she knows who she is, the lady in the lovely watermelon top. A guest of Carol Bond is Donna McDowell, and the guest of Yudan Zhu is Cameron Hogarth, and our guest of Actarine is Arben Tareen. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Would you please welcome all of our guests? And you're all very welcome. So it's fantastic to see everyone here. All right, now to the business of the day, which you've all been waiting for. Okay, so Dr. Gael Jennings, sorry, Gail. And Gail, I think, is somewhere in Melbourne. I'm not quite sure where she is, but as you know, Gail is an award-winning broadcaster, and she was awarded her AM in 2020 for services to science and journalism. So she's going to talk to us about STEM, the way of the future. But just let me tell you a few things about Gail. But actually, if you're from Australia, you really should know Gail. I'm sure those of you who watch either the ABC or listen to the ABC 774 or SBS would know Gail. But anyhow, so Gael Jennings is a national TV and radio broadcaster with 25 years experience as a presenter, reporter and TV executive. She was the ABC's first national science and medical reporter for TV news and for the 7:30 report, presenter of 7:30 report, and also a reporter of ABC TV's Quantum and Catalyst, host of ABC Radio 774's programs, an insight presenter on SBS, and was also a development producer with ABC TV. Huge amount of work there and roles, very diverse. But Gail, after graduating with a first-class honours Bachelor of Science from the University of Melbourne, she completed her PhD in immunology at the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute of Medical Research in 1982. And currently at the University of Melbourne, she's researching the effect of the internet, this is very topical, of the neurophysiology of the brain and the impact of new media on women, including social attitudes towards them and violence against them, very topical at the moment. So would you all join with me in giving a lovely Melbourne welcome to Gail. Welcome, Gail.
Thank you very much. Great. I'm very sorry, first of all, that I can't be there with you. It's much better when I can, when I can actually see you and you can see me and we sort of know where we're going. But I've got a bit of a COVID situation happening here at home in that my husband has it. So I'm isolating in Northcote, as it happens. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we're meeting, the Wurundjeri people where I am, the Wurundjeri people and the Bunurong people from the Kulin Nation, and note that this land has never been ceded, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. Happy International Women's Day / Week. Yes, it is. The theme is Break the Bias. And since I'm here to talk about women in science, technology, engineering, maths and medicine, that is the acronym STEM, as you know, I thought I might use what's happening and has happened in STEM as a bit of a case study for gender bias and what can be done to maybe change it, the $5 billion squillion question. So it's obvious that to achieve equality, women have to gain entry to the fields that have been closed to them because they've been dominated by men. Because we have to have a seat at the table and we have to have a voice, but we also have to have the expertise that comes with these important fields. In STEM in particular is an incredibly important field because it's where we get evidence from, it's where we get data from, and that's how we construct our human society. So knowing about the natural world, doing experimentation in it, or being literate in it is absolutely pivotal if we're going to be functioning and powerful members of the society. We can't leave it to other people. We need to have that empowerment ourselves. Well, at first, when I was a second wave feminist, way back at the beginning, well, before my career, actually, we thought that would be mostly for huge personal empowerment. But then when you do look at the things that STEM does generate, the data it generates and things it allows, just some examples that we need to be literate in so that we can have some say in the future and in the lives that we were going to be living and are living. The mapping of the human genome, we never thought that would happen, but no, now we've got our hands on every single gene that's in human beings. And that means that we can delete some, we can cure some diseases by deleting them or changing the way in which they act. We can trace the origins of people. We can, even if we like, select what kind of people we want to be around. So there's huge power, both for good and for bad. We need to know about it. Reproductive technology, the board meeting I'm actually going to straight after this, I'm on the regulatory authority for assisted reproductive technology, but I've always been very interested in it because once we got the egg and the sperm out of human bodies and conception happened out of human bodies, that meant we could do all sorts of things. And there was a massive legal, ethical and moral debate that went on for years over the start of artificial, well, can't call it artificial technology, but assisted reproductive technology. And then of course the internet and the complete revolution that's brought us in our social and economic structures. And as it turns out, the consequent devaluation of evidence-based construction of human society, where opinion is now fact and fake news is as good as real news. They're just tiny examples. There are millions of them. The ways in which we live our life come from STEM. So STEM is vital. And there are some absolutely amazing examples of brilliant women who have led us just now through COVID. I'm going to name some of these because I think it's really important because these women have been absolutely pivotal and they've been very, very in our sight. Sharon Lewin from the Doherty, Raina McIntyre, Head of Global Security, Biosecurity, Mary Louise McClaws, who's an epidemiologist, Catherine Bennett at Deakin, Nancy Baxter at Melbourne University, Abha Chopra, who's Head of Research and Development at Murdoch University, and so on. But actually, it turns out that these marvellous women are, not exactly an anomaly, but they certainly don't represent what's actually happening in STEM right now. In fact, things are not good in STEM, just as they're not good anywhere else for women. Let's start with the evidence that girls are actually really good at STEM subjects. There's just been a meta-analysis of 1.6 million kids, girls, or girls and boys, that's been published in the very prestigious international journal Nature. And it shows that girls outstrip boys in performance in primary school, secondary school, and at university in STEM subjects. But when it comes to actually taking their degree, only about a third, just over a third, 35% of girls actually take their degree in STEM subjects. And when you look at the workforce of STEM, it's only 28% women. And even worse, when you look at the leadership positions, it's 23% women. Women who are in STEM careers are also massively underrepresented in the fastest growing and highest paid jobs of the future, like computer science and engineering. Women make up just 11% of software engineers, 25% of Silicon Valley developers, and 7% of partners of venture capital firms. The disparity between men's and women's pay in STEM is much worse than other professions. In other professions in Australia, there is a 14% wage gap, gender wage gap between men and women. That means that we women have to work for an extra 61 days a year just to get what men get. In STEM, it's 19%, which is another 83 days a year that we would have to work to get the same pay. So this is telling us a lot about what's going on in STEM. It hasn't, as yet, provided women with a route to power and equality. Why? Well, there's a lot of material on this, but just referring to the federal government's own STEM initiative website, it's gender bias. Surprise, surprise. It's not just gender pay gap across all levels of employment in STEM, or workplace harassment, of which there's a lot, or the gendered expectation that women will do the childcare, or even gender bias in hiring and in the granting of funding. It's gender stereotypes. It's that girls don't feel comfortable doing science because they think that scientists and doing the sciences, they think that STEM occupations are male. They describe primary school kids, both male and female, describe a scientist as a man in a white coat. And most girls will say, rather than wanting to be a doctor, they want to be a nurse, and boys want to be the doctor, all that stuff that we know about. This is stated succinctly by the authors of the Nature report, and I'm quoting it now. They say that gender stereotypes keep women out of STEM careers. If women conform to gender stereotypes, that is, be what's known as a girl, they may be perceived as less competent. But if they defy gender stereotypes and perform like a man, then their progress may be halted by backlash from both men and women. And COVID's made it a lot worse for women. The Australian Academy of Science in its 2020 report states, and I'm quoting, "The pandemic appears to be compounding pre-existing gender disparity. Women are underrepresented across the STEM workforce and weighted in roles that are typically less senior and less secure. Job loss at a greater rate than for men is now an immediate threat for many women in Australia's STEM workforce." So, as if that's not depressing enough, it turns out that STEM is not our friend in the way data is generated, then applied to the worlds which we construct. The evidence, the data that we humans get from STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths, and medicine, is used to create most of our human society, from public transport and roads to town planning, architecture, medicine, pharmacy, technology, work, and leisure, basically from algorithms to government policy. Yet almost all of this construction of our human society is based on data from man as the model. Male is default. Women are basically the invisible 51% when it comes to generating data upon which we base human life. Now, some of these examples I'm giving you, just a couple because I've only got 20 minutes, are from this fabulous and award-winning book that's got a bibliography, about this big. It's got all the original data in it, studies in it, it's called Invisible Women, Data Bias in the World Designed by Men, 2019 book, and it's by writer, broadcaster, and Sunday Times bestseller Carolyn Criado Perez, OAM. So these are some of the bits of data. There are so many. It's a really good book. You should read it. Cars are designed around the body of reference man. So although men are more likely to crash cars, women are 50% more likely to be hurt. Most offices are, and we will have noticed this, if we remember, 5 degrees too cold for women because their buildings are generated on the basis of a 40-year-old man of 70 kilograms, and men have faster metabolisms than we do, so we find it cold. Women in Britain are 50% more likely to be misdiagnosed when they're having a heart attack because trials generally use male participants. I heard this on the radio the other day in another way. I think it was on Radio National with Patricia Carvelis. She was or it might have been Raphael Epstein, I don't know, but they were interviewing a very famous researcher who was saying that 30% of the symptoms of a heart attack we don't really know about. And those 30% are actually what women get. I think they're things to do with our arms that are not generally, the things about our heart and all the others. Each day is harder for women than it is for men because roads and public transport, buses and trains and trams and where the roads go are based on getting out of your home, going to work and coming back. They're absolutely not built for getting out of your home, dropping off the kids, going shopping, looking after the aged parents, picking up the kids and going to work in between. So our days are much harder and more complicated and more expensive. Fitness monitors underestimate housework by up to 74%. And some people who push prams complain that it doesn't even count steps when you're pushing a pram. One woman reported that her car's voice command system only listens to her husband and he's in the passenger seat. So anyway, this one size fits men approach does harm us women, of course, because it omits our bodies, our activities, our work, our actions, and our very lives. And that's not to say it's all some kind of heinous plot. It's not. It's actually like what Perez calls a fog of unconscious and unthinking preferences, which has led to the absence of women from the creation of most societal norms. That's a quote. Now, one of the most powerful creators of social norms, of human social norms, is, of course, the media. And as Sandra mentioned, I've done quite a lot of research in this area and I've been a journalist for a very long time. Research shows that the media is very gender biased. Not only do research findings suggest that the majority of Australian female journalists have been sexually harassed, and if you were a room of female journalists and asked you to put your hands up, you would find that probably about 80% of you would be putting your hands up because that's what's happened when we've done this. But it also finds that men are vastly more likely to own media, to be at the top of it, the CEO or the director, to be on media boards and to be chair of those media boards, to be in senior decision-making positions, to be editors, columnists, named reporters, experts and sources that people have gone to for opinion. It's overwhelmingly men who decide what news is and how it's communicated and what they think and see is important. They do through their own unconscious and unthinking preferences, also known as gender bias. In 2014, when Luke Batty, Rosie Batty's son, was murdered at cricket practice in front of her and all his little classmates, or all the kids and families that were there, the media coverage of men's violence against women and their children was very poor. Men killing their intimate partner or ex was and is, as you probably know, the leading preventable cause of death of women of childbearing age. At that time, that plethora of murders by men of their former partners and children was underreported. And when it was reported, it was a domestic disturbance or was reported as a crime, not related to how it came about. And it wasn't called what it was, which is an epidemic of men killing their intimate partners or exes or their children. The then director, the brilliant and wonderful director, a good friend of mine and someone I admire with all my heart, the director of the Centre for Advancing Journalism at Melbourne University, Margaret Simons, suggested that we do some research on whether there was a link between the male domination of media and how news was gathered and reported and the way in which violence against women was being reported. Long story short, we did a lot of research. We worked with a whole lot of different disciplines and stakeholders across law, academia, domestic violence workers, the agencies representing women, a whole range of print, broadcast and digital media and newsrooms, and got an ARC linkage grant, and that was able to show that the male bias in media was linked to reporting, the kind of reporting that perpetuated the attitudes that led to the violence against women in the first place. It normalised men's feelings of licence or having more power than women, and it thus perpetuated these harmful attitudes towards women. Just to give you an example of the reporting, in 2014, when one woman was killed, almost 1 point something women were killed every 2 weeks. And this story ran by her intimate partner or ex. And this story ran, it was a well-respected and much-loved local farmer, Jeff Hunt, who murdered his wife and 3 children. But the story was all about his anguish and about the prevention of male suicide. And then just this year, all those years later on, 8 years later, and January the 30th, The Age ran a story, and this is when 1 woman a week is killed, so it's nearly doubled by her intimate partner or ex. The Age headlined the story with, "Sorry for not being able to save you, 2 children killed by father in Western Australia." And the sorry was for the man, the father, who was depressed, not for the children who were murdered by him, nor of the mother who was separated from him, who paid the ultimate price for leaving him. So the media itself is a place of male bias, and this male bias can perpetuate harmful stereotypes which further erode our safety and our life. And here we come to STEM again, specifically technology. We in the media, when the internet became clear it was going to give us new media, digital media, we thought, hooray, you know, this is a way around the male hierarchy, so we can tell our stories and it'll be democratized and it'll give women a voice. And we were probably somewhat naive, because the most powerful thing about the internet when it comes to women is not that they've got their voice, although many have, and that's a fabulous thing, but it's actually silencing women. And the reason that it's silencing women is because of trolling. New research by the Office of E-Safety, just out this week, shows how common it is, not only for female politicians or media personalities to be targeted with abuse, but also for everyday professional women. 1/3 of professional women are abused online for sex, looks, or motherhood. Most women with an online work presence get sexually abused online weekly. My daughter's a journalist, digital journalist, and what happens to her is too horrible to tell you. Strangers account for 60% of perpetrators, 40% are professional contacts, and 20% of perpetrators are personal contacts. Women, as a basis of this is what the director of the Office of E-Safety says, Inman, that women are less likely to put their heads up, they're more likely to self-censor, and they're stepping back from leadership. So I know this is a very depressing list, and this is where I have thrown to you with a challenge. I ask you, what on earth can we do about this? How many years has it been? And I was talking to a very dear friend of mine, a very strong and able woman. And I said, what can I say? It's so depressing. And she said 2 words, Grace Tame. And interestingly enough, 2 or 3 days later, the new initiative came out. A powerhouse, this was the day before yesterday, a powerhouse of women of all colours, ability and non-ableness, or other abled. I'm sorry, I said that wrongly. I meant able and other abled, cis and LGBTQI, launched the Safety, Respect, Equity Initiative, which calls for systemic reform in how women are treated. Brittany Higgins, former Australian of the Year, Grace Tame, former Liberal politician Julia Banks, former Australia Post boss Christine Holgate, Madison de Rosario, who's a Paralympic athlete, Larissa Behrendt, Indigenous rights activist, Chanel Contos, that absolutely wonderful young woman who put the online petition out for young women to say whether or not they were sexually assaulted at school, and was bowled over by the huge percentage of women who were, and now has an online petition to teach consent at schools. Michelle O'Neill, president of the ACTU, Yasmin Poole, who at just 22 is listed in both the 40 under 40 most influential Asian Australians and Australian Financial Review's 100 Women of Influence, Lucy Turnbull, Wendy McCarthy, Georgie Dent, all of these women are behind this new initiative. So I think this is for us. This is where we can become warriors. We can make this the third wave of feminism, and God knows we need to. We have to fight if we really do want women to be safe and we want there to be equality, and we break the bias. And STEM is uniquely positioned to break this bias, because if we enter STEM, if we're literate in STEM, if we understand STEM, then we can construct the data without the gender bias that can enable us to have the evidence with which to change things so that they're equal and safe. So thank you for having me today.
Many thanks, Gail. I was actually wondering if you were going to go over time, where I would stand. Would I stand here or stand in front of you? But that was fantastic, and I was certainly left wondering how far have we really come, and some of the challenges of social media that social media brings. Okay, now it's over to you. We've got a few minutes for question time. We can't go over time because Gail has an important meeting to go through. So I'm to advise you that we're going to have questions now. And ask you all to wait for the microphone from the MC, who's Carol, the amazing Carol, and to stand and clearly state your name before asking the question. And we are able to take online questions, can signal or post in the chat if they would like to ask a question. And I think Joe will look after that. So we're catering for our online people, so please be involved. Okay, who would like to ask Gail a question? Don't be shy.
I can't see you.
David. Good, Dave. Good.
Thanks, Gail. My name is David. Given the preponderance or increasing in preponderance of women engaged in prominent positions in the arts, how do you think there might be a way for the arts to infuse STEM subjects, not only in schools, but also long-term in teacher training?
Thank you, David. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, okay. That was a really good question. And in fact, there are quite a few initiatives doing that, the crossover between art and science. For example, my alma mater, the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute of Medical Research, there in the Parkville Triangle, it has a big exhibition every year of art and science. The new Science Gallery, just up there where the Royal Women's Hospital used to be, on the corner of Grattan and Swanson Street, does exactly that. It's a gallery that is sort of art and science. I think I'm just trying to think of some of the other things that I've been to that have pulled the two together, because I think that there's a very big need for science to be made a lot more open and attractive to all kids. I mean, kids love science. They absolutely love it, and girls love it. That's why so many of them do it and do it well at school. It's more, how do you make it attractive as you go on? And the real barriers are that they don't feel comfortable in it because of the presence of the male culture. So it's a slightly different thing, I suppose. But I do think it's a very valid point that you raise, and a terrific point.
Question over here. Any further questions for Gail? Yep.
Gail, Bob Glindeman. I'm one of those male chauvinists that seem to be to blame for so many of these things. Why are women in some of these circumstances so angry in the way in which they express their concerns, when in fact sometimes a more, shall we say, ordered discussion or debate would achieve more than a lot of anger?
Thank you, Bob, for that comment. I think it's a really important comment because it's what I've been hearing most of my life, I suppose. I think it's a misunderstanding to think that anything that talks about gender bias is attacking all men. It's talking about a systemic setup of power, and that setup of power is evidence-based male. Well, I just gave you a whole lot of data about that. The evidence shows that society is constructed by men and mostly for men in terms of who runs it, who runs the companies, who's on the boards, who's the CEO, who has the money, etc. I mean, that data is there. So that doesn't mean that every man is awful, not by any means. I'm married to a gorgeous man. I've got wonderful sons-in-law. I know lots and lots of wonderful men. It's not about all men. It's about structures of privilege and power. And the data also show absolutely, and I'm a scientist and I go by the data, that women are peripheralized and in danger. I mean, if the lead cause, preventable cause of our death or the death of women of reproductive age is their intimate partner, it tells you an enormous amount. And I think that all the Grace Tame stuff and Brittany Higgins and the Me Too movement and all the statistics behind violence against women show us without doubt that women are harmed and women are unsafe and women are scared. And I do believe that we have tried very hard, as I have my whole life, to be polite, to be nice, to be respectful, to work harder than men and get more qualifications than men, to be heard as much, to have a seat at the table. That is the story, both documented quantitatively and qualitatively across women's experience around the world. I think, though, that we've got to a stage by women being so ignored over the last couple of years when it came to the treatment of the Prime Minister of the Kate Jenkins Sex Commissioners report, it not being adopted, and the statistics around the culture at Parliament House and what was happening to women there, and the number of women who were able to speak because they were journalists as well, and then they put out. This is one way in which social media was incredibly helpful. They were able to gather women's stories, which reached a critical mass. I think it's a lot to ask women not to be angry when you've been raped, to be honest, or sexually assaulted. I mean, 1 in 3 women have been raped or sexually assaulted in this country. You know, not 1 in 3 men, 1 in 3 women. And you can be polite till the cows come home. But when this happens, someone has to at some stage say, look, we win this together. We all have to work together to make sure this doesn't happen to half of us because we're cowed and we're scared. So I think there should be room for forgiveness for anger and put that energy of being annoyed into working with us to make sure it stops happening.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Gail. And that concludes the question. I think we've run out of time. But Gail, I'd like to warmly thank you on behalf of everyone. You've spoke your mind, what's on your mind. You've shared your views, and we just need to keep the conversation going. And I do love the idea about a third wave of feminism. That sounds like a group that I want to be part of. Now, we have gifts coming your way. So by snail mail, I'm not sure when you'll get them. We have, for your delight, we have the Rotary 100 socks, which are actually made by our very own past president, Phil Endersby, and I think he's on Zoom from Wilderness Wear, and they're made by in Preston. It says here that they're 200% Australian made. That is amazing. I don't know whether you're going to go to Antarctica with your STEM friends, Gail, but maybe you could wear the socks there. I don't know. Maybe that'd be suitable. I'm sure they would be. You also have a limited edition, which I forgot to say. Also, we're going to be sending your way the Rotary Centenary coin, and also a book. So there you go. I'm not sure when you'll get that, but I hope you'll enjoy that. Okay, so thank you very much. And
Thank you, my
you'll be
pleasure.
on time for your meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
So now we're going to have a break, and there'll be some time for some fellowship, and we'll reconvene in 15 minutes with some notices, and it'll be Reg's time to tell you a few things and close the meeting, because you know. Thank you, everyone.
And I thought it was probably a bit unfair to ask Sandra, who did a much better job opening the meeting up than I ever do, and put a bit of a fresh sparkle in it as well. So well done, Sandra. Thank you. And great to our team. Sana, great reflection. Thank you. And of course, Carol, as is becoming, we're becoming used, you did a great job opening the meeting too. So thank you. Just a little bit of member news that I think is important for all of us. First of all, Bev Brock, you'll notice she's not here. She was actually going to chair this. She and I twisted Gail's arm to get her to join up, and Bev actually was initially going to be the chair, or the interim chair, of the International Women's Day Committee. Unfortunately, Bev is having some urgent surgery today. We don't know yet. The surgery was literally just this morning. Haven't heard back yet how she's going. We'll give you an update on that as soon as we're able. I did, however, have a conversation this morning with Cynthia Edgell that we haven't seen much for the last few weeks. Cynthia was really badly affected by that medical emergency where we locked down our operating theatres, and she really urgently needed hip surgery, and she had that about 3 weeks ago. She's making a miracle recovery, didn't even have to go to rehab for the punitive version of hospitalisation. So she's expecting to be she is up and about already, and likely to be back with us quite soon. So that's fantastic news. Any of you who know Cynthia, she'd be delighted if you could reach out. If I could also mention someone who's online today who had a pretty nasty fall a few weeks ago, and that's Brian Horwood. Good to have you here, Brian, and I hope you're recovering rapidly. Be great to have you here as soon as you're able. Now, thanks everyone for coming in person today. We understand. Yes, okay. I've just been told I've got a bit carried away with having the chair back. Bruce Davidson, would you like to come up and give us an update on footy tipping? Thanks, Bruce.
I love it when the president gives up the podium for me. Very nice. Now, I'd really like to spend my 3 minutes, or is it 4, or is it 5? It's only 2 today. How about that? I'd like to continue on International Women's Day. I had my first bosses were women. And I had the privilege when I worked at the Parliament of Victoria to work with lots of very competent women members, and they were fantastic. When I started there was only 2 members in the Parliament, and when I left, a third of the Parliament were women, and it made a really big difference for the better. The footy tipping. Now, I'm not going to talk to you about what a great exercise it is to be putting in your tips every week. I'm going to talk to you about why you should join. The Health and Ageing Committee have been running a Rotary initiative where they take isolated and underprivileged people down the peninsula for a Christmas day lunch, and it's been going on for well over a couple of decades. It's an iconic initiative from the Rotary Club of Melbourne, and it deserves your support. So I don't care if you're not interested in footy. The idea is that you sign up and join the footy tipping. You put your $40 in like everybody else. It's the right thing to do. And don't waste your money. Put your money in, join someone up, put someone in that you know, a neighbour, a relative, a friend. There are lots of people interested in footy, and that's what you should do. And we need to raise $2,000 for this. And footy tipping's on the wane. So I need more people to sign up. So just think about it. You've got a week to do it. Go home, think about another $40 for the Rotary Club of Melbourne. You keep tipping money in, another $40 isn't going to make any difference. Deb Yun Fu puts her 2 cats in, and they tip very well, as does Peter Dakin with his dogs. Ross Scholes Robertson puts the grandchildren in. Robin Sign puts the grandchildren in. Just do it. Just put someone in the footy tipping. $40. What is it? A couple of beers. Don't worry about it. Thank you.
Okay, I've asked Bruce not to leave the podium. Would you mind drawing the raffle, please, Bruce? Just so you know it's completely objective.
I have to say that when I do the raffle, I fold all the tickets up.
I know.
Who did the raffle today?
Me and Joe, actually.
A61. Hey,
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations, Donna McDowell, who's guest today of Carol Bond. Okay, just to give you a couple more notices. Firstly, we sent around yesterday a brief update on the District 9800 conference and the on-to-conference experience, which is one of those ones this year that'll be really good to start getting back into the habit of some fellowship. So if you're tilting the way of coming onto conference or the district conference, give it a go this year. Sue and I can help you do that. Okay, the Young Achievers Award, I'm repeating the message, but the applications for that close shortly. If you know someone or you know someone who knows someone who knows an outstanding young person that's going well in their early career, but also is a great contributor in a social justice program or a community program, suggest to them that they might like to look at the Young Achievers Award, and they'll be in there with a chance. Finally, just to remind everyone, we haven't been all that hot this year on recruiting new members. We've got a couple in the pipeline. I'd like to remind everyone of our International President's call to us. Every member should get a member. And what would happen in Rotary if we did? Wouldn't that be fantastic? So please consider friends, colleagues, acquaintances, and people who look promising with a view to them joining Rotary. We'd love your suggestions. Please get in touch with Christina Boys on prospective membership matters. Thanks. Draw of the raffle now done. And to close the meeting, I'd like to say thank you everyone for being at our slightly differently shaped International Women's Day event today. Thanks particularly to MC Carol Bond, Thanksgiver Sana Malik, and Chair Sandra Hills, and to our lunch setup team who, manage the complexity of things exceptionally well. And I think somewhere in the room, we've had Andrew, our technical advisor, helping us out on the sound, and that certainly helped today. A reminder that that next week is our monthly meeting. Our guest speaker is an esteemed financial expert, not known to a lot of people in Australia, but incredibly widely known in Asia. He's appeared at Davos. He's a real thought leader in investment. He's going to be speaking to our meeting next week. Jim Rogers is his name. He'll be zooming in again from Singapore. It's an online meeting, so that makes it pretty simple for us to run. His topic will be investing and creating businesses in a post-pandemic world. But let me tell you, he's the sort of guy that likes an interactive Q&A, so I reckon he'll give you about 5 minutes of comments, and the rest of it will be up to us. So bring your questions along as well. So if you could now stand, and we'll close the meeting with the national anthem.